Hi everybody, I'm Connor McElhone, and here's my slideshow about all the plants and animals I saw in the wetland ecosystems. The first place we went to was Orlando Wetlands Park to visit a freshwater marsh. Water hemlock, Cicuta mexicana, identifiable by white flowers with 5 petals and 2 leaves. Very poisonous and deadly for humans and livestock. Can grow to be about 2.5 meters tall. Gulf moly, Muhlenbergia capillaris. It's notable for purple inflorescence when it reaches maturity in the fall. It occurs throughout southeastern USA. It's also known as pink moly or hair-on moly. Water primrose, Ludwigia octovalvis. It can be confused for St. John's wort, but you can tell it isn't because it has 4 petals instead of 5. It also has entire leaf margins with an acute apice and ovate blade shape. It invades disturbed wetland habitats. Maiden cane, Panicum hematomon, a common grass in the USA coastal plain, especially in Florida. It's notable for its extensive rhizomes. After settling on the shoreline, it can move out to open water and form little islands. Smartweed, Polygonum hydropyperoides. It has small white or pink flowers. It's identified by its swollen nodes as well as its large, acicular leaves with acuminate tips. The stem and leaves can irritate the eyes if touched. Golden canna, Canna flaccida, notable for yellow, large petals with 3 sepals. Has large, entire margined acuminate leaves. They are popular as ornamental plants. Southern cattail, Typha jamengensis. This cattail is likely to be of the southern cattail species because the picture was taken in the southeastern USA. They're an invasive species. Cattails in Florida flower from January to June. White water lily, Nymphaea odorata, a floating lily pad with a white flower atop its pad. It can be found in both acidic and alkaline waters. White-mouthed dayflower, Camelina erecta, has 2 large blue petals and a smaller white petal. It blooms year-round. Bottlebrush therion, Aristida spiciformis, very common in Florida's coastal plain, identified by its white inflorescence that resembles a brush, an invasive species. Black vulture, Corygips atratus, looks somewhat similar to the turkey vulture, but has a black head instead of red, and its wings are all black when viewed from below. Roseate spoonbill, Phytolea ajaja, has bright pink feathers and a spoon-shaped bill. They prefer to hunt in shallow water with a muddy substrate. Anhinga, Anhinga, dives in the water and swims to catch prey with its pointed beak. Has a long neck with brown feathers and black and white plumage on the wings. Common gallinule, Gallinula galliata, identified by its black and gray feathers with a red shield on its beak, can often be found by lily pads. Red-shouldered hawk, Buteo lineatus, noticeable for its orange-barred feathers on the bird's belly, often seen perching on trees and hunts in areas with clearings. Black-bellied whistling duck, Dendrocygna autumnalis. They make whistling calls and form flocks with each other. Adults have black bellies, brown wings, a gray face, and a red bill. Great blue heron, Ardea herodias, Florida's biggest and heaviest heron, has blue feathers, forages in shallow waters. Snowy egret, Egretta thula, very common, smaller and has darker beak than the great egret. It preys on fish. Bald eagle nest, Haliaetus leucocephalus. Bald eagles make large nests in the tops of trees. Bald eagles are noteworthy for their white feathers at their head. American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis. This alligator species appears in every county in Florida. Females lay about 20 to 50 eggs per year. Common pond hawk, Erythemus simplicicollis. Mature males are blue with black stripes on the thorax and abdomen. They are often split into two species, eastern and western pond hawk. For our next trip, our class visited Tosohatchee Wildlife Management Area, which is a hydric hammock and freshwater swamp. Bald cypress, Taxodium distichum, found in freshwater swamps. They are distinguished by their knees, which are used to help aerate the roots and stabilize the tree. Cardinal airplant, Tillandsia fasciculata. This bromeliad is recognized by its inflorescence, which flowers from mid-spring to summer. They are pollinated by birds. Bartram's airplant, Tillandsia bartramii. This bromeliad flowers after reaching 20 to 45 centimeters in height. It is an epiphyte and is very common on trees in Florida. They grow in humid forests and swamps and flower from March to July. Spanish moss, Tillandsia usneoides, a very common epiphyte on trees like bald cypress and live oak. Doesn't have any roots. Shoestring fern, Vitaria lineata. This fern is an epiphyte on sable palms and has grass-like leaves. Their habitat is moist hammocks. Red maple, Acer rubrum, a maple tree with palmate and serrate leaves. The leaves have 3 points and turn red and fall off as autumn approaches. Wax myrtle, Murica cerifera, distinguished by rhomboid blades with slightly toothed margins and acuminate apices. They tend to live in wet or well-drained soils. Yapon holly, Ilex vomitoria, distinguished from American holly by its leaves, which are less curved inwards. Holly leaves are serrated and dark green. Native Americans used to use this plant to make black tea. White crownbeard, Verbesina virginica. It's a food source for butterflies and skippers. It has multiple white petals. It's also known as frostweed, and it dies during winter and resprouts during the spring. Resurrection fern, Cleopeltis polypodioides, often found on live oak. They can survive even in a desiccated state by curling its fronds and uncurling when it has access to a little water. White ibis, Eudocimus albus. Adults are white with a red bill, while juveniles are brown with an orange bill. The ibis pictured here is a juvenile. They nest or roost in tall trees. They are bigger and heavier than other ibis species. Golden silk orb weaver, Nephila clavipes. It has black and yellow striped legs and a long, somewhat thin abdomen. It's also known as the banana spider. Spotted orb weaver, Neoscona domiciliorum. It has a round black abdomen with a gray stripe in the middle. Its legs are red and black striped. During the day, they hide inside of leaves near their webs. Southern black racer, Coluber constrictor priapus. Black racers have black scales on the dorsal side and some white scales under their chin and throat. They are non-venomous but will bite in order to defend themselves. The last place that we visited was Rock Springs, a spring ecosystem. Tape grass, Vallisneria americana, can be found submerged underwater. The longer leaves float up near the surface. It is typically found in north and central Florida. It's a valuable food source for some birds. Spider grass, Websteria confervoides. It can be identified as a floating mat of stems and leaves. It is very slender and submerged. It isn't very important to wildlife and rarely grows too large in population size. Water lettuce, Pistia stratiotes. It can be identified by its spongy leaves. Can be seen floating atop the water. The leaves are arranged around a central axis and have fine dense hairs. They can provide cover and shade for fishes. Giant duckweed, Spirodella polyrhiza. Despite the name, giant duckweed is a tiny plant. Its leaves have 2 to 3 fronds and it floats freely on the water surface. It is typically found in alkaline, nutrient-rich waters. Water pennywort, Hydrocotyl vulgaris. They have an orbicular leaf emerging from below the water and crenated margins. They start growing on the shoreline and then progress out to open water. Pickerel weed, Pontidaria cordata. They're very common in freshwater ecosystems, easy to identify with many blue or violet flowers. They're used by many birds as a secondary food source. Cordgrass, Spartina bakeri. They have leaves that are 100 to 200 millimeters long and they tend to form clumps. They grow near the shoreline of wetlands. Stands are often used as a refuge for wildlife such as invertebrates. Muscadine, Vitis rotundifolia. This grape species has leaves with a somewhat flabellate shape and obcordate apices. They are well adapted to the hot and humid weather conditions of the southeastern United States. Tuberous sword fern, Nephrolepis cordifolia. Although many ferns look similar, I think this is a tuberous sword fern because the tuberous sword fern is mentioned to be found in limestone ledges and wet places, like the Rock Springs that we visited, while other ferns are said to live in hammocks. It's the only member of its genus in Florida to produce rounded, below-ground tubers. Eastern mosquito fish, Gambusia halberki, has big gray eyes and a small dorsal fin. Their caudal fin is shaped somewhat like a seashell. This is the most common freshwater fish in Florida. Redbreast sunfish, Lepomis auratus. This fish looks similar to the bluegill. You can tell it's a redbreast sunfish because of the longer black ear flap. The fish pictured's ear flap extends too long for it to be a bluegill. Spotted sunfish, Lepomis punctatus. The spotted sunfish has a black circled ear flap and some spotted patterns on their scales. It is also known as the stump knocker. Inland silverside, Menidia berylina. This fish has a somewhat yellow coloration and has a very small dorsal fin. It can reach a maximum of 6 inches in length. It has very clear fins. Eastern gray squirrel, Sciurus carolinensis, has gray fur with white fur on its underbelly. Gray squirrels in Florida are only 2/3 the size of gray squirrels in places like New York. Tricolored heron, Egretta tricolor, looks similar to the little blue heron, but has white feathers on its underbelly. This bird often runs after prey such as fish. They tend to be solitary. Familiar bluet, Enolagma signatum, The damselfly pictured looks like it could be a familiar bluet or a blue-fronted dancer, but I think this is a familiar bluet because the familiar bluet has a thicker black stripe on its thorax than the blue-fronted dancer. It has a wide range, being seen nearly everywhere south of southern Canada. Thanks for watching the video.